Hey, welcome to the Super Not a Discussions.
Super Not a Discussion?
Why can't I get these right? I can never start podcasts properly.
So, okay, welcome to the discussion of Animal Farm by George the Man Orwell. I've heard that's his middle name. You know, his parents were like, well, clearly he's going to be the fucking man.
Right.
So, we'll cut to the chase, put it
Exactly.
right in there.
So when people are like, stick it to the man, they're referring to George Orwell.
No, George Orwell came up with stick it to the man. It's an ironic thing.
Oh, it's like Philip DeFranco has a fuck Philip DeFranco t-shirt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant.
This is all bullshit, by the way, just for people listening.
What?
Can't see.
There's no bullshit here.
We don't lie.
This
we wouldn't say things we don't believe.
We don't say things just to be ridiculous and over the top, brother. Everything here is planned
and truthful and completely finished
and written. We write it all.
Hey, I've got 8 pages of writing.
I'm a better actor than all of the actors on those shows that pretend to be bullshit.
On these shows?
Like, what the fuck's that show called? The Nova Scotian one?
What? Oh,
Trailer Park
Boys? Yeah.
Yeah. How they write it and act it so well that it feels like it has
like
no
it has
writing.
no writing.
Yeah, I'm better than all of them. So are you.
Just the king.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. No, you're alone on this. You're the shit.
I'm acting and you're not? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
How would I rehearse my lines if you... Okay, let's get into the book.
People are like, this has nothing to do with Animal Farm. Like, I don't understand who these people
I
are.
clicked on
They're
this.
not funny. I don't understand their humor, and they won't get to the book.
It said George Orwell. I don't know. So far, they've only made fun of him.
Okay, yeah, we should jump into this because it's a short book. It's only 100 pages.
Whoa!
But
let me confirm.
Yeah, go for it. It's 102. I lied.
I like the feeling of this book.
Yeah, I like a small book.
It's 120 pages. You fuck,
dude. That's with the outro.
I don't care
about that. That last bookmark is the last page of the story.
Communist Party. Is this book about communism?
Yeah, actually, more or less.
I didn't. That sounded way too serious. I know what this book.
You know exactly what this book's about. Okay. So for anyone not initiated about Animal Farm, it's something we're about to go through right now. I don't need to give you a synopsis.
Well, I mean, you saw the thumbnail. You clicked the video.
Yeah, exactly. People get a general idea.
You saw the blue and slightly darker blue.
Yeah. Well, I'll just describe that George Orwell wrote a lot of books where he tackles some sort of a topic in a way that isn't the traditional concept. So he could have written a book about how governments sort of, ultimate power corrupts ultimately. Mm-hmm. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's the expression.
Is it?
Yeah, that's how it generally seems to go if you look at the world.
I always heard it condensed to power corrupts.
Which is also true, but I think the idea is like a little bit of power corrupts. You get like a rent-a-cop who likes to push people around. But absolute power, like a Kim Jong-un type person, ultimately corrupts. Like you have so much power, you're like a Joffrey out of Game of Thrones. Right. You just fucking run mad with power.
Right.
And so I think he could have explained it with people, and it would have been fine. But the fact that he explains it with animals makes it so much more abstract. It makes it so much more easy to understand how these types of patterns happen.
I think it's similar to Zootopia, how they made these extremely obvious to adults analogy of racism and prejudice.
Which is why I don't think this book should be read in high school necessarily, because at that point you haven't seen how ideas travel. You haven't seen how things go from generation to generation and how info gets lost.
Yeah, I don't think I understood the importance of this book. I don't think I really understood what was even happening in this book when I read it as a kid.
You know what? That's almost what I want these discussions to be. Even though we're not very PG in these discussions, it seems like it's something that if you heard this after you read the book, you would go, oh, okay, like this is what this other person gets out of the book. This is like an all-encompassing view of the book. Whereas when I read it as a kid, these are a series of words on pages. I read them, I find quotes that I can use to make some sort of feeble point, and then I'm done with my essay and I move on.
Well, this is a discussion.
So that's what this is. But it's only 100 pages, but every sentence pretty much has meaning, which is why I have so many notes for this book. Because you're going through it, and he'll say something in one sentence that has huge implications, but he didn't dwell on it because he doesn't need to.
Right, okay.
It's a very lean book. There's not a lot of fat around it, whereas Frankenstein probably had like 50 pages of fat. of just
Interesting.
like he was traveling from one city to another. It took a long time, and they describe like that part of the process, but it has nothing to do with the actual story.
Okay.
Whereas this one, like he'll in one sentence he says several years passed, and you're like, oh shit, okay,
Okay.
so we're jumping ahead, right? He doesn't feel the need to be like, and then summer turned to winter and winter turned to summer, like none of that.
Interesting.
So on that note, Mr. Jones is the farmer at the very start of the book, and he owns Manor Farm. So that's the name of the farm.
Is there a statement there?
I don't know, because I don't really know what manor means. I think I thought a manor was like a mansion, like a home, like a big, big home.
It could mean that it's like in the manner in which you carry yourself, maybe.
Oh, interesting. Manor Farm. Okay, I kind of see that could have some significance. He does some naming, and his naming pisses me off. I'll get into that later.
It's like Porky the Pig and.
Well, so there's two neighbors. There's Mr.
That's really fucked up now that I think about it.
What, Porky the Pig?
They named him after the food that comes out of him.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Like Beefy the cow. Like,
ooh,
what the fuck
that is
that?
really creepy. Poultry the chicken.
Yeah. Fucking
Ugh.
strips the chicken.
Strips the chicken. Oh my god, that's so vicious. Oh, okay. Backstraps the deer.
Backstrap.
That's not good.
Do they actually get? Is deer meat a regular thing?
No, like deer meat is sort of a more gamey type of meat, so you usually only eat it if you know someone who's hunted it, or apparently you get deer meat from New Zealand.
Oh,
Apparently they hunt a lot of it there. But yeah, you wouldn't walk into a restaurant and get deer meat very often.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's more of a higher scale type of meat.
Yeah.
So the neighbors, this is where the naming pisses me off. His neighbors are Mr. Pilkington of Foxwood.
What?
And Mr. Frederick of Pinchfield. So you've got Mr. P from F Farm and Mr. F from P Farm. So every fucking time, at one point I wrote it down on a sticky note because he would mention one and I would be like, wait, which guy is that?
Oh, why would he do that?
I think he did it because there's a lot of illusions like that where, the way the sheep behave is like what you would call sheeple nowadays. Have you ever heard that expression? And the way like the cat behaves, it's always very aloof. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Whenever there's a conflict, it's nowhere to be seen, and like it only shows up for food, like that kind of thing. So I think the idea is that all of the people around him are supposed to be like these nameless type people. It's just supposed to be like anything that happens outside Animal Farm is kind of irrelevant. So he was almost trying to like cloud the information. So the one guy,
he's trying to. It's supposed to be like. People in a country going through this situation would hear about things happening outside of their country, but wouldn't actually understand the relevance because they're not there.
Exactly.
Because this is meant to mirror Stalinism, which would have been during like the 40s or 50s, in an era where you could seize information in a completely different way.
Lock it down, yeah.
Whereas today, like even in countries that have the internet, like there's still ways of getting information through there, even if it's heavily guarded.
Well, and also there's this thing where people go, yeah, Syria, where is that? Somewhere in the Middle East, somewhere in Asia, somewhere, or you hear the name of a country and you get it mixed up with another country like Iran, Iraq. I think it's that kind of idea. He's basically trying to make it obvious that when something doesn't directly affect you, it's harder for you to internalize it.
Right.
But the funny thing is I never realized that until we just started talking about it now. I always thought he was just being a dick.
Well, yeah, that's probably what it is. He probably give you some so-and-so names that you're just like, whatever. And it's supposed to give you that feeling because that's how you'd think. If you're living in a country that was going through hard times and someone's like, Canada is going through a little bit of a flag. They're trying to find their new flag. And you're like, I don't give a fuck what Canada has to do with their flag, all right?
Well... I think part of it is that if I wrote this story, but I'm a hack, but if I wrote this story, I would be like Mr. Pilkington of Pinchfield. So you've got Farmer P, and then I would have been like Mr. Frederick of Foxwood, Farmer F. Right. So then that way it was always like super clear from the get-go. But I think George Orwell is a lot smarter than I am and knows that you're supposed to think throughout the entire book. And it's only 100 pages, so it's not hard. It's not like a grind in any way, but doing things like that keeps you thinking. Every page there was something where I would go, oh, whoa, okay, like this is now significant. This changes things.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the second point form I have. I have 8 pages when we got to the second point.
Jesus.
So, sorry, I'm still on the first one, actually.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones is a drunk, like a terrible drunk.
Okay.
But he has a bunch of helpers on the farm, like people that do his work for him, essentially, because he's a drunk. And he lives there with his wife, but ultimately they're not important. The people are not important in this story. So Old Major is this big prize pig, this white boar, and he's old. That's why he's called Old Major.
Right.
But he's been on the farm forever. And so he has this dream. I had a dream, and he invites all of the other... What?
Was that a pig accent?
That was a Martin Luther King accent.
Is that how he talked?
Yeah, sort of. I had a dream. Yeah, that was kind of what it was like.
I actually don't know what he sounds like.
No?
Enough. No.
Oh, okay. It's a good speech.
Yeah.
But either way, he has this dream, and he calls all the animals into a meeting. Because at this point, for some reason, all the animals can talk to each other, but they have no sense of organization. They behave exactly like normal animals, but they can speak.
Interesting.
To each other.
It's probably supposed to be an analogy,
I guess,
for how people just go about their lives. They can communicate with each other, but they never do anything about the circumstance they're in.
That's a good point. I think that is part of it, is that he's saying all animals can communicate, but no animals have coordinated. Right. That's like the big key. So this is the first time, like they come into a meeting together. Now they're like a unit.
Plants, dude.
It's like the fucking plants in The Happening.
They can talk to each other
by their roots.
I think it's by the wind.
It's probably by both. So a bunch of people show up. Boxer's a really important character. He's a big, super strong, dumb horse. But actually, all the horses are pretty dumb. In all honesty, they're supposed to be workhorses, right? That's the idea. Right. They're not the intellectuals, but they're super helpful. Yeah, they're workers. So Molly is a prize white mare. So she's a horse, but she's like a pretty horse.
Molly likes to have fun.
Yeah,
Molly likes to party.
Fun girl.
A party's always good, but it gets even better when Molly shows up.
So then there's Clover is a motherly horse, and she kind of takes care of everybody. The pigs are all very generic. Like, there's a bunch of pigs, but they only ever refer to 2 or 3 of them, which is very strange. But anyways, there's a bunch of pigs there.
I remember Boxer. I remember the classroom I was in when I read this.
Really?
It's all coming back, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Not in a good way.
So there's the cat, who ends up in the warmest spot. Like, that's the thing about the cat. The cat is the most selfish character in the book.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Makes sense.
And then, so then there's Moses, who is a tame raven and belongs to Mr. Jones.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, this is the one. I always forget about him because he's there in the beginning and he's there a little bit in the middle, but that's about it. It's very strange, his character.
Maybe he's supposed to be.
Yeah, he's
forgettable.
He's almost like a naysayer, kind of. Because Moses, later on in the story, starts telling these stories of Sugar Candy Mountain, which is this, fairy tale place he invents so that all the animals are like, oh, I want to go to Sugar Candy Mountain, and he tells them he's been there and things like that. So he's almost like a Judas who's trying to lead them astray. Yeah, I don't know why he's called Moses, so I don't know.
That's probably
where
something
the symbolism is, but yeah,
it's
she's trying to get you to think for sure. Yeah. So Old Major calls them all and he has this big speech, and he says, so they're in England. That much we know. And he says,
I actually always imagined it being in England for some reason, like the rolling green hills of England.
Yeah, and I always pictured it because it's sort of old-timey, but it's farms and everything's established.
That's so weird that I always imagined it in England, even though I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm imagining, what English farms would have looked like during that time period. That's very strange.
Yeah, the time period is kind of ambiguous because later on they get a television set.
Oh.
Yeah, so it could be...
So it could be early 60s, late 50s.
Something like that, I'm assuming, because it's not a smartphone era, you can tell. But it's definitely not, the era... It
wasn't even smartphone era when I read this, so...
Well, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so he wrote it in 45, right? So you have to imagine it's probably similar in era to him.
Whoa. He didn't write this... He wrote this during...
the war.
Wow.
Pretty sure.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting because that makes this so much more relevant or poignant, I guess. Because instead of speaking about a thing that happened as a way of trying to dissuade people from going down the same path, he's doing it while it's happening. That's totally different.
Yeah. Well, and he's trying to show people how ideas travel. So he says that. So the pig, Old Major, says that all these animals are slaves, and he said we have great location for farming, great land and like conditions for farming. But the problem is man steals everything from us. Steals all our food. He keeps us in captivity. And he says he steals your young. He steals your produce, which is like eggs or milk or whatever. And he says man produces nothing himself. He doesn't create anything. So the idea is that if animals were able to liberate themselves, they would be able to live free. Right? That's the idea.
If you're a vegan, this is
the perfect story.
This is your Snowpiercer.
Well, for the it's true. Yeah, this is the vegan Snowpiercer.
Be a shoe.
You must be a shoe.
Shoes don't go on heads. Hats go on heads.
So he says eventually this revolution will come. It'll come either now or it'll come one day, which is kind of a cop-out. But he's right.
Can we just do this one day? You're right. Back to work.
Yeah, everyone go back to sleep. Let's not worry about it. And he says, all men are enemies, all animals are comrades. So he's establishing that right off the get-go.
Comrades. Interesting that he uses that term a lot. Even though they're in England. Very interesting.
They use the term a lot.
Was this written in England?
I don't know. I actually really don't know.
Where's Orwell from?
I believe he's from Europe. Like English Europe, but I don't really know.
Was that George Orwell on the back of the book there?
I'm not really sure who that is. Let's see if you can see a caption underneath that.
Yeah.
Mitch is just looking at the book. But
I think that's Malcolm Bradbury.
Malcolm Bradbury.
Interesting.
So they even have a vote. They vote that all of the rats are also their comrades because rats are animals.
Right.
So when they do the vote, the dogs all disagree for obvious reasons.
Course.
And the cat votes for both sides. Right?
How can you even do that?
You just put your hand up twice.
Oh.
Right?
Well, that's so dumb. They're like, I didn't even notice that.
But some of the animals are really dumb.
Oh, there's a lot of... Oh,
yeah, Boxer,
a lot of animals,
Boxer the dumb horse, is only able to learn the first 4 letters of the alphabet.
Wow.
A, B, C, D. And then when he tries to learn E, D, F, G, he forgets A, B, C, D.
Whoa.
So he then just switches back and just remembers the first 4 and just sticks with that.
Oh, he's working with what he got.
Yeah, so they're not all the brightest animals. So they actually come up with unofficial commandments right there. Like, he says it during his speech. So here,
Is this the open, too? Like, it starts like that?
Pretty much, yeah. This is how the book begins. It describes Manor Farm, and then it goes straight into Old Major.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is it. No animal must ever live in a house, or sleep in a bed, or wear clothes, or drink alcohol, or smoke tobacco, or touch money, or engage in trade. All the habits of man are evil, and above all, no animal must ever tyrannize over his own kind. Weak, strong, clever, or simple, we are all brothers. No animal must ever kill any other animal. All animals are equal.
Huh.
So that's not the tenets, but those are a basic guideline. Like, that's what he says should be in his speech.
Interesting. Immediately.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know if all this came from the dream or if the dream inspired him and then all this came from what he knows. But I'm pretty sure Old Major was like 12 years old or something like that. So for an animal, he's been around a long time and like seen what humans have done for a long time.
Did you back up from the mic?
Maybe.
I can't remember now.
Maybe. I don't know.
That'll suddenly impact
I might have just gotten closer. Sorry, people. So those are the unofficial commandments. And then he teaches the animals this song. And this actually might be why you knew it was in England. He teaches them the song Beasts of England. Which is...
I don't think I remember any of that.
So, Beasts of England is essentially their O Canada. We're Canadians, if you don't know us. So, it's essentially their anthem, but it's the anthem of rebellion, right? Because they don't have a country. It's not like they're proud of where they are. So he teaches them that almost so that they can keep it in their hearts, right? So that they can keep that, like, alive.
Do they like sing it, like hum it together, like oh, hey, oh.
Yeah. So it imagines, like, in it they talk about a better world where the water is pure and like everything is better because man is gone. And then they learn it and they sing it 5 times in a row. And this is not a short song. There's probably 7 or 8 verses to this song.
Whoa.
So they sing it 5 times straight, and then the farmer gets woken up by this. And
I was just gonna ask.
He's a drunk, so he just grabs his gun and shoots at the barn. He's basically just like, shut up, and just fires at the barn. And all the animals scatter, and that's the end of the meeting.
Wow.
Yeah, which is such a drunk hack move.
Well, I think it's probably meant to represent, or it's probably meant to solidify the ugliness of the character. That they're sitting there talking about revolting, and he's like, fucking sit down, asshole!
He doesn't even go out there to see what the commotion is.
No, he just shoots at them.
Yeah, he's like, it'll be quiet if I fire my gun at it. Sure.
I'll take out the loudest thing I have to quiet this place down.
Boom! Yeah, seriously. So then 3 days later, Old Major dies.
No.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden he becomes a prophet, right? Because
of course he does. He's
right?
solidified in his last moment.
He, not a martyr because he wasn't killed by the farmer, but he dies and his message can no longer be amended by his own words, right? He can no longer...
Someone else has to take over.
He can't be the chieftain. He can't be like...
Power vacuum, dude.
Well, exactly, because they had never had any sort of organization. All of a sudden they had it, and then Old Major was gone.
Wow.
So no one had anyone to look to anymore. So the pigs take over the organization of the meetings. Because the pigs are the smartest. It's easiest for them to talk.
And they're following in a pig's footsteps.
Exactly, that too. So they sort of succeed the Old Major.
So the animals are kind of like party system, right? The pigs, the horses, the cats, the cows.
Not really.
No?
It's more or less the pigs are the government, and all the other animals are workers.
The pigs. The pigs are a semblance of the rebellion that intends to be the government.
Yes, exactly. They're
like Washington, like kind of like how Washington had an army and generals and shit like that. Oh, I guess it's not really a civil war, is this?
No, it's not a civil war, but they are the ones who intend to organize their side of things. So as soon as they take over power, obviously they're still going to be organizing their sides,
right?
Ways.
Interesting.
So they take on all these meetings. So the three big ones emerge. These are the three pigs you always hear about. There's Napoleon and Snowball, who are both boars, I believe. So they're males.
Napoleon.
And Squealer, I'm pretty sure, is a female.
What the fuck?
But Squealer is known for being able to essentially convince anyone of anything. Like they always say Squealer can turn black into white.
Mm.
So that's Squealer's role in all this, is he's like the propagandist.
Wow.
That's his thing. But I mean, you'll find that out as we move forward. Because Squealer's always the one interfacing with the animals. He's always the one spinning the lies.
It's like the seriousness of those names. Just like, it's like, what was the first
Napoleon.
guy? What was the prophet?
Oh, Old Major.
So you got Old Major, Napoleon, Snowball, Squealer. Like,
well,
wow.
The farmer probably named them.
That really degrades over time.
Yeah. And like, it's a little weird, but so they create what's known as animalism. And they create this and the tenets of it based off Old Major's speech. So they form this so that all the animals are have an easier time internalizing what Old Major told them. Because not all the animals can remember everything he said.
Yeah.
So, first of all, the tenets like already included things like cannot wear clothes, cannot do whatever. So Molly and some of the other animals kind of resist because Molly like gets fed sugar and wears ribbons and all these things that they consider forms of oppression, but she likes because she's one of the only animals that gets pampered.
Right.
Right? And that's actually something I never picked up on the first time I read it.
Did they explain why?
Well, she gets pampered because she's a prize mare, right? She's a prize horse. She's not a work animal. She's not for produce.
Oh.
She's probably not even really to ride, right? She's like for beauty. That's her whole purpose.
Yeah.
So for her, like, why would she want to give that up? She lives better than all the animals, right? So why would she want Jones to go away?
She represents the high class.
Exactly.
The ones who say, like, there's no problem with this world. Look how great it is.
Yeah, they could, because they happen to be in leagues.
The rest of you just need to be more beautiful and you'll be fine.
Yeah. But they tell her that ribbons are a sign of slavery, so she can no longer wear them.
Wow,
so,
I like this.
Yeah, this is like the first...
When I was a kid, I didn't get any of this shit. I was like,
Dude.
Sure, Stalinism, but it's like, ribbons are a sign of slavery.
Yep.
That's serious.
Dude, it gets dark really quickly. Like, I told you, all those little things you go, whoa. Like, this is a very real conflict that's all of a sudden emerging. So the horses are super blindly faithful because they're not very bright, right? So they kind of follow whatever they're told, and they're okay with that.
Right.
So the meetings always end with Beasts of England. Every time they finish a meeting, they sing Beasts of England, which I think is
really strange.
It's a very interesting, it's like a regime type move, right?
Yeah.
When it's all done, we'll sing our song, it brings us together as a group, and then we'll adjourn.
That's weird, because I would have thought that starting it like that, starting it as in a unison, would get you all on the same page. That's interesting that they end it that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an introduction. It's a celebration almost.
Because typically, you would start with that.
Yeah.
Like even with like the like red green, like they do like I don't know if I have to. Like they do that whole thing at the end.
Oh yeah.
But then there's like
if I have to, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. But at the end, it's I don't even know. I think it's just kind of like goodbye. Like there's like nothing at the end.
It's true.
And it's like that's how even like
I think
when they depict old meetings from like the 20s, they would start with a hymn and then they would end with like
just adjourn,
like amen or
well, it's usually can I get a second, right?
Is it?
Yeah, it's one person moves to adjourn the meeting, and then somebody else has to second that motion, and then you adjourn.
And then bang, and then everyone walks away. Interesting. So This is almost the opposite.
I think the reason they do it is because it's a rebellion, so they want to keep it fresh in everyone's heads that this is what we're doing. We hate the farmer. We don't want to be slaves. And so by putting that as the last thing people sing right before they leave.
One moment. Sorry about that.
So, that's okay.
I did call a moose over.
Moosey! So
Are there any moose in this? See,
no
I brought
moose.
it full circle.
None moose.
There's no circles at all.
Zero moose.
That was a triangle is what that was. No, it was a line.
It was a line and it went nowhere.
2 points. It's a line segment.
It could have been a curved line, but no.
Now my ears are all popped. I can't hear anything.
So since Jones is a drunk, he sort of falls behind on his upkeep, gets really lazy. He leaves for an entire day. So the animals get missed at the start of the day to be fed. And then if Jones forgets to feed them.
Oh, mist. Sorry.
Yeah,
I thought you meant like he has some
he
sort
fed
of
them
like,
mist.
Yeah, he has like a mist machine. He's like
some horror story.
Yeah, he's like, I don't have bowls to collect the water. He's just like, suck it in.
Oh my god.
Suck it in.
Take the mist.
It just fills the farm with mist.
So he forgets to feed them, and then his men go out rabbiting, which I assume is rabbit hunting, and they forget to feed them as well. So now the animals, I think, have been unfed for like a day and a half. If not, they've been unfed for an entire day.
Even more solidification of this idea.
So they're pissed. They're pissed.
Yeah.
So they break into the store shed. They're just like, fuck this, we'll feed ourselves. So one of the horses just kicks the store shed in. They all go in, they eat their fill, and then all of a sudden the farmer and his men start coming back. Shit. And the animals are just like, fuck you guys, you didn't feed us. So the animals start attacking the farmer and his men. They start kicking them and butting them and like pushing them. So eventually they drive them totally off the farm.
Yeah.
They're just in such a flurry, and the men are not organized.
I'd be scared if they were all in unison, too.
A horse, a pig.
You got like
big animals.
Yeah, there's a bunch of animals, and they're all together, and it's like, this is fucked. This is creepy. I don't like this on its own.
So they drive them off, and they go, oh my god, we're free. So then they do an inspection. They walk around the entire farm, because this is now theirs, right? This is their farm.
Everything the light touches
is ours, except for there's fences, so they know where their land ends.
Right.
So they walk around the entire farm, and then eventually they get back to the farmhouse. And in the farmhouse, they all like tiptoe through it because they're so unfamiliar with it, and they know they're not supposed to like sleep indoors or anything. So they leave it as like a museum, but they go through it just to see what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And they find Molly like trying on ribbons in a mirror, and they like scold her for it because, again, like the ribbons are a sign of slavery. So all animals must go naked. It's like a rule. All animals have to be naked. Yeah, and so they all agree that they're just going to leave the house, and it'll just be like a mausoleum, essentially, and they're all going to live in the barn, same way it's always been. So that's
there's a lot of parallels I'm drawing to this, to a lot of stories where it's like, let's storm the castle to take out the king. It's like, we're not going to use the castle because it's a sign of slavery.
Yeah, we won't take the role of king, though. Then it's like, we'll make it democratic.
But George has been spending a lot of time in the
castle. Oh. What are we gonna do? So then they actually create the 7 commandments. So these are like true commandments of animalism. This is the wrong page.
Is this meant to be just I mean, you said it's about ideas, but so the main idea is that this mirrors Stalin's reign, but it also is it supposed to mirror anything else?
If you really read the book and you see all these little tiny things that happen, you'll notice connections to everything. You'll notice connections to the power vacuums in the Middle East. You'll notice connections to Hitler and the rise of the Third Reich. A lot of connections to Marxism and the rise of Stalin.
Yeah.
Some things will be super reminiscent of North Korea.
Oh.
So I honestly think that this has more to do with
just the idea.
Destructive human patterns. And they play out in animals in this story because the animals are the best way to describe different types of people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are pigs, some people are
polarized,
horses.
right? It's
exactly.
a way to extract, distill the essence of somebody, and just kind of instead of it's like if you just colored people with colors that no one ever is, and you were just
blue,
the
green,
blue people
red.
are sad and the green people are this. It's
exactly. You're exactly like you said, polarizing people
or different nipple shapes.
Honestly, we could have a whole war over that. If you haven't watched Rick and Morty, watch it all.
Oh fuck, it's
watch
so good.
So the 7 commandments are: whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy,
including the raven.
So that's an interesting thing. They later they make a simplified version. So the simplified version of all the commandments.
A comprehensive book on all the commandments.
Well, that's the thing. The simplified version is meant to summarize everything in animalism into one sentence.
Everything
so
you'll need.
Even the sheep can remember it.
Oh.
And so they simplify it to 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Oh my god.
That's their lowest level version.
It's like when they explain a new bill to the dumbest people on the planet, and they're just money is good.
They are stealing your water, just the that kind of thing. So when they say that, the birds get upset because the birds have 2 legs. And what the pigs tell them, I think even Squealer tells them this. He says, "Yes, but in fact, a wing is not an instrument of manipulation. It is an instrument of propulsion, the same way a leg is." So the difference.
I remember this.
Yeah.
This is
so
good. I like this.
wing and a hand can't perform the same tasks because you can't grab with
right.
a wing. But a wing and a leg perform the same tasks because they push you forward.
And they're calling people manipulators because they have hands that can manipulate things. This is really fucking clever. This guy.
Yeah.
And he's doing this in the 40s.
Yeah. Oh, he saw this happening in his own time, and he knew it would continue to happen into the future.
That's amazing. Did he have connections to people? Was he part of any of this at one point? I have a feeling he knew people, or he was somehow involved in a government, or maybe a small form of government to understand this stuff. Or maybe he's just a scholar.
I don't know anything about George Orwell, actually.
I'm curious, do you know anything about Stalin's rise? Because I don't really know anything about it. Did he take power the same way that
Hitler did?
That they took power in this book.
That's funny. That I don't know either. I'm really not super familiar with the Stalin story. I more know what happened during the war and after.
Because that might be how it happened. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he convinced people to help him take power and then did it, and then just became the power.
Yeah. Well, because you'll see that it really starts to turn into that slowly with time. So the other commandments, I love how you picked up on that immediately, the thing about the 2 legs. So the second commandment is actually whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend.
Well, there's part of that, the reason why I want to talk about that was you've got these blanket statements that don't quite work. And then someone's like, well, don't worry about it. Just don't look at that part, look at this part. And that's how a lot of it goes. That's
how all laws are.
Well, all the big topics right now on the internet and in the world is racism, feminism, the vegan movement, and all of those on both sides have picking and choosing what they want
to talk about,
what works, but at a certain time. They'll say it's okay here, but it's not okay over here, and someone's like, well, what? That does sound like the same thing. Nah, no, but you're forgetting. This is different.
Yeah.
This is different.
Well, that's where Squealer comes into all this, because Squealer explains away all those holes. Squealer fills in all those little gaps that people notice in their logic. So the other rules are all very simple. You've heard them before. It's no animal shall wear clothes, no animal shall sleep in a bed, no animal shall drink alcohol, no animal shall kill any other animal, and all animals are equal. So those are those are just like a distilled version of what Old Major originally said, and those are the 7 big ones. And then the phrase I said before, the 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, is printed in huge letters above the 7 commandments.
Wow.
So that's almost like the hierarchy. Remember this big higher up one, and then remember these 7 addendums.
Well, that's an interesting. That's like a civilization thing. That's like something that's been going on for a long time in civilizations. Is that you distill the idea. Is distill the right word? It's to get distillation is essentially to get a concentrated version. Okay. So to distill your community down to its basic core, like Game of Thrones, where every single house has a saying. A Lannister always pays their debts because that's what they consider to be the best thing or the most important thing about their group is that if we claim we will pay you, we will pay you.
But that's actually not their house.
No, that's
expression.
True. It's true. we do not sow, like things like that. Like they have these ideas, and even the States has it. I'm sure Canada has some. Like, I don't think Canada quite has that, but like in the States, it's like, probably a good one is "God Save the Queen." That's like that's a big statement. I'm sure that's like engraved in granite somewhere. In England.
For sure, yeah. A lot of places probably. And, it's a big expression there.
But even on, like, shows like Sons of Anarchy, they have shit on the wall. That's like, if you don't ride, you don't vote.
Men of Mayhem, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the weird things about it is that they create these hard, fast rules, and then they start to realize these hard, fast rules won't always apply. And then they start to realize that there's also issues. Like, so the cows demand to be milked because... They have to be milked, yeah. So someone has to do it. Turns out, apparently, pigs are really good at it. Apparently.
Okay.
Well, because the pigs have... the pigs, like, feet or legs or whatever.
Right.
They refer to them as trotters. They're not hands, they're not feet.
Sure.
They're the pig's trotter. And most of the pigs apparently can grab stuff. So, like, they use pencils, they use paintbrushes. They're able to milk cows.
I've seen where this is going.
Yeah, so
These pigs are very like the...
they're manipulators.
They're like the humans.
Well, and they start to turn into the humans with time. So the cows need to be milked. So Napoleon says, okay, well, we'll milk them. We'll just get it out of the way. And then people are sort of left with a bunch of milk, and they go, what do we do with this? Napoleon says, don't worry about it. We got to get to work in the field. So everyone leaves and goes to work in the field, and the milk disappears. And no one ever sees it again. Yeah.
It's also important to note that Napoleon was a leader.
French leader.
A French leader.
French military leader.
But he was before Stalin, wasn't he?
Long time before, if I believe correctly.
Like a couple decades at least.
Yeah, like I think he was, this is such a huge gap, but like somewhere between the 15 and 1700s. Like that kind of era.
He might have been slightly later. I don't know. You're probably right about the 1700s.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you, but I know it was sort of the era of muskets.
Right.
I know that. Based off video games.
If you haven't...
Inaccurate facts. FACT fact.
If you're interested in the actual history, I'm sure there's something about this somewhere on Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. I'm sure he's talked about Stalin.
That's true. He would have better information.
Yeah.
Very much better. So the harvest is actually more successful without Jones and his men. Because all the animals are doing the individual work.
Right.
And there's also things like the chickens and the ducks and stuff and the rats will go and pick up like individual pieces of straw that the farmers would have missed. But a duckling can't pick up anything. So they just walk up, they grab one piece, they take it over. So when the field's done, it's like picked bare. So they've harvested way more because there's so much more
so their efficiency is increased.
Way higher.
Because they're now utilizing there's no idle hands anymore.
And they care. The animals didn't care before because they were toiling for the humans. But now the animals are like, everything we do benefits us. So they're working way harder. And Boxer adopts this motto. And it's so funny. I when I first read it, I was like, Boxer's an idiot. His motto is, I will work harder. Like, that's how he solves all his problems. He's just, I will work harder and that will solve the issue. And I thought, what kind of an idiot would think that?
That's a really common human thing.
And then I realized I do that all the time.
Yeah.
You run up to a problem or you start to like panic about something. And you're like, okay, it'll be all right. I'll work harder. And it's weird because you go, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
And this character is supposed to be this simple-minded character. So why is it I share this trait with this simple...
Well, it's because you've been taught that.
Not necessarily.
You work hard in school, you apply yourself, you got a good job. It's like it's all about this like work hard instead of be working intelligent.
That's not even really what I mean though. Like for me, I like to do a lot of things. I like to do these book discussions. I like to do what we do. I like to like write poetry in my own time. I'm working on my game. I have work. So I find I'm working all the time. Like even when I'm done work, I'm working, just not on stuff I get paid for. Right. So, and that's my only solution. The only way to get all this shit in is to work harder and harder and harder, fill more hours of the week with, quote unquote work.
Well, Henry Rollins said there's no free time or downtime or off time. There's just time.
Yeah, that's a great expression.
Yeah.
It's really important too.
Well, it's also important for anybody who's working on a passion project now that they want to turn it into a job. You have to stop looking at it as like there's no real off time in your situation anymore. You have to consider what you're working on now to be your second job that you're going to turn into your first job.
If you can.
So you're pretty much going to have to put like 20 to 40 hours a week into that job
at some point,
the same way you put 20 to 40 hours a week into your first job.
Yeah, which is a rough combination.
It's obviously something I'm finally like slapping myself in the face over. It's like, stop spending your days off. Like that needs to be different work,
but not off. So there's obviously the horses who work super hard, but then there's some that don't. Like the cat is never around when there's work, but he's always there when there's food. Right?
Fucking cats.
Cats. Our producer knows what I'm talking about. So Molly, the horse, is a super late riser, and she's always finding reasons to leave the field early. So she's not working that hard because she's not used to working that hard. That's not her thing. Right? So that obviously, like, it starts to present some problems, but ultimately everything's getting along really nicely.
Yeah.
So they're doing Sunday ceremonies now. They find this green tablecloth, and they paint a white horn and a white hoof onto it. And that's the Animal Farm flag, and they fly that flag. So they hoist this flag, this tablecloth, and so they have debates on these Sunday meetings, these ceremony meetings. And in those debates, they decide what they want to do and how they should arrange their harvest and stuff like that. And so the two main talkers are Snowball and Napoleon. Those are like the big ones, and they're always going back and forth, and they always oppose each other. Every time. If one person takes one stance, the other one immediately is a contrarian to it. Which is
regardless of their actual thoughts, they actually just want to contradict the other.
Yeah, they're more battling each other than they are trying to be productive. And the meetings still always end with Beasts of England. This is still like a thing that they do. So the pigs actually set aside a room for themselves to do like a lot of this arranging and organizing, and no one really thinks about it because I think it was a room they used to use for like saddling up the horses and putting their horseshoes on, so they didn't really need it for anything anymore. So the pigs take over this room, that becomes theirs. Snowball starts setting up committees. So Snowball starts going down like the democracy route where you have all these little groups of people to control all these little things, but
no one controls everything.
Yeah, you have like this group controls education and that group controls like food supply and that. And at the same time, Napoleon is more interested in like practical ideas and things they're going to do right now. So the pigs can read and write. So they try and teach the other animals how to read and write, and they start to find books, which they then begin to read and learn from. But most of the animals can't learn. Like most of the animals are just not pigs. Whereas the pigs are just as smart as people. They can learn anything they want. They can apply their mind to anything they want.
How about the ducks?
The ducks are pretty stupid.
Okay.
All the other animals are fairly stupid. There's an old donkey named Benjamin, who's probably one of the smartest characters that's not a pig. But he doesn't give a shit. People ask him stuff, and he's like, a donkey just lives forever, man. Or something like he's like, a donkey lives for way too long for anything to matter. And they're like,
he's a vampire. He doesn't give a fuck about...
Yeah, he just...
I do not consider the troubles of man as part of my troubles.
Yeah, he basically considers himself just totally removed. He just doesn't care what happens because he knows... He always says, like, things will always be as bad as they always were. Stuff like that. He's a big Debbie Downer, but he's, like, a very intelligent character, and he can read, too. So they find out that missing milk actually went into the pigs' mashed potatoes. Shit. So they all of a sudden realize that. But the animals don't seem to do a lot about it because they don't have like a whole lot of power. They have no method to do anything about it. And this is the point where Napoleon, there's 9 puppies that are born to the dogs. And Napoleon takes all of those puppies and sequesters them for education.
Oh, shit.
In like a private room.
Otherwise known as indoctrination, dude. He's teaching them about his ways, dude.
Education is tantamount to indoctrination, which leads to the continuation of this dreaded nation. So
where did that come from?
I saw a rhyme and I went for the rhyme.
The dreaded nation. Indoctrination.
So the pigs decide that the apples are going to be reserved for the pigs because Squealer says to them that they need them to maintain their good health and that they need it for all the brain work that they do.
Because everyone's equal.
And then this is where it starts to get weird. Squealer starts to say this thing that he says all the time. He says if the pigs were ever to fail in their job, Jones would come back. And you don't want Jones to come back, do you? And so all the people go, oh, okay, yeah, like you guys need apples to do your job so that Jones doesn't come back, right? That becomes the narrative. The narrative is essentially that the pigs are keeping Jones at bay, so the pigs need to be maintained.
Right. He's essentially, I mean, it sounds like the pigs pretty quickly realize they can just be Jones. I don't think that it's not like when I first read this, I thought it was a slow transition.
Well, it is a slow transition.
Well, it sounds like they just immediately figured out like all we need to do is slowly turn into the leaders. Like all we need to do is
they must have known from the beginning.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is how much backtracking happens. So they start to do things like they send out pigeons to spread Beasts of England because they want it to spread over the countryside. So the farmers that live next to him, Mr. Pilkington, has this little farm that's it's a big farm, but it's like very poorly kept. And then the other guy, Mr. Frederick, has a small farm, but it's really well kept. And those are their neighbors for the whole book. So those are like the only other characters now because Jones has kind of been booted off. So the other people, the other farmers, start to spread rumors about animal farms. They start to spread rumors of cannibalism, torture, shared women. As if that's, I imagine an era, or actually I guess that could happen nowadays, but they share their women there. You can't even imagine how monstrous. Yeah, so anyway, so they start to spread all these things. So animals everywhere start to rebel in really small ways. Like cows will kick over the milk bucket when they're being milked, and like pigs will headbutt the farmers.
They've inspired revolution all over the country.
Not revolution, but they're starting to stir unrest. They're starting to generate general feelings of unwellness in the animals around, and therefore the humans, because the humans are starting to realize this is now a problem.
My fellow animals, march with me.
Hear me. Follow me.
Barbaric.
So Jones returns at this point and attempts to retake the farm.
Oh, shit. Like military men and everything.
No.
Pitchforks?
Yeah, so he returns with 6 men that have guns. Sorry, 6 men that have sticks, and Jones has a gun. I mean, they're like clubs, but sticks, essentially.
So this guy's he's not the brightest tool in the shed.
Well, I guess he assumed the animals weren't organized.
He probably should have.
Yeah, after the way they got kicked off.
Because, like, if a pack of pigs came at me, I would think, like, that's just pigs. But if
all the animals?
Pigs and chickens and ducks and a horse and a cat were all, like, get the fuck out of here, I'd be like, well, that was weird.
Oh, we'd come back with a lot more guns.
Yeah, all 6 dudes would have guns, this is what I'm saying.
So they come back in, and so Snowball leads the charge. And what they do is a few of them run in and attack, and then as the farmers are fighting them off, the animals retreat. So Snowball and all his others retreat back towards the farmhouse. And when they draw in the farmers and get them to break rank, everyone else ambushes them and jumps on them.
They're really organized.
Yeah,
now.
so they know what's going down, and they use this military strategy to defeat them. But Snowball is actually wounded because a shot from Jones's gun scrapes along his back and kills a sheep.
Oh, no.
So one sheep dies, and Snowball is injured. So after this is over, they hold a ceremony because they're celebrating what they now call the Battle of the Cowshed, because that's where it occurred.
Even have names for the battles.
Well, they have to, right? They have to remember them. Wow. Same as the Battle of Vimy Ridge. It's just you name it after where it happened.
That's what I mean. They have it's like it's so significant to them that it is actually named.
They even give out medals.
Whoa.
So they give out so the sheep who died.
But I thought you weren't allowed to wear things.
Well, they're not physical
medals.
Commendations. You don't put them on. Yeah, these are really more like commendations. They're distinctions. So the sheep who died is granted Animal Hero 2nd class, and Boxer and Snowball are awarded Animal Hero 1st class. So those are just ranks, right?
2nd class though.
Yeah, but because the sheep didn't do anything other than die, right? The sheep wasn't instrumental in the attack, but he did die. That's why he's receiving the second class.
Sure.
So, well, you get a Purple Heart for being injured,
Right.
but you don't get a Medal of Valor for being injured,
Right.
right? Because those aren't the same thing.
I suppose it's just like that, giving it that name.
Second class?
It's like
yeah, you're
like
a second class animal
Medal
hero.
of Honor Silver.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So they give out these, and then they take Jones's gun and they set it up like an artillery. So like not for combat, but for sounding. Like you know how you fire off the guns as a celebration.
Right.
So that's what they set it up as, and then it stays there for the rest of the story as their like celebratory. You know, boom, we did it. So they set all this up, and they. You know, nothing really happens after the cowshed. You'd expect that they'd be shooken by this experience, but mostly they're kind of brought together. So Molly then becomes an issue because Molly starts to like mix with humans. Like she's seen near the other farms, like the fence that borders the other farms, being like pet by humans, and she doesn't work very hard. And then I'm pretty sure someone finds sugar in her stall.
No.
Yeah, and then
That bitch.
one day Molly leaves to go live at another farm.
Shit.
One day she's just like, you know what,
Just up and leaves.
I am not cut out for work. Right? Not everyone wants to rebel. Not everyone,
Yeah,
you know,
true.
some people want to live in that captivity. One thing I always like about the show Spartacus is the one guy says, when you're a slave, it is the only time in your life where you're truly free because you have no choice over what you do.
Right.
Whereas as a free person, you have to choose where you want to go, and that's what the trap is.
It might have been Socrates. When man is given free will, he is condemned to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good line.
It's kind of like when your boss tells you to do something you don't want to do, and you're like you tell the person, you're like, look, so I have to tell you, it's like,
sorry,
you're not like, I'm not responsible for this, I'm just telling you.
I'm the messenger,
and you know that I have to do this for my sake, and I have to tell you for your sake. So it's like neither of us wanted this to happen.
Shitty
it's
free will,
absolutely
yeah.
not my choice anyway. It's like, whatever, my hands in the air.
So Snowball is giving some sort of a speech, and the pigs actually override his speech by chanting 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Like the sheep actually do this a lot, where they overpower what somebody's saying using this chorus. Yeah, it's almost like I really don't have a good example, but imagine you're somewhere and you're trying to make some sort of a point about how immigration is a problem, but immigration is ultimately good for a country. You're making this like nuanced opinion, and then a bunch of dudes in the back start going USA, USA, and they get louder and louder until you can't even talk anymore. That's what it's like. And there's actually one point at which I'll mention it again later, but the pigs actually chant that for 15 minutes straight. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Remember, they don't have a lot to do on this farm. So standing there doing that is like
15 minutes is really not a lot of time to take out.
Exactly. It's only like a tiny fraction of a day. So they vote on the plan to move forward, and it's almost like an election, but it's not an official election.
Right.
So the 2 phrases are vote for Snowball and the 3-day week, because Snowball wants to move into a direction where they can work less. So that's kind of what we're doing nowadays, right? We're trying to put ourselves in a position where we don't have to work as much, and we can enjoy ourselves with our like off time. And Napoleon,
You got family day.
yeah, exactly.
February.
And Napoleon is vote for Napoleon and the full manger, because he essentially wants to work harder and have more food, more available.
So they're
more
holding an
resources.
election. They have a split down the middle.
They don't have an election, but these are the 2 ideas they're putting forth. And they're going to do a vote, not for a person, but for a plan. So the plan is either go for the 3-day week or go for the full manger.
So is there a real leader here, or is it more of just like
Those 2 at this point.
the 2 leaders? Do they agree on anything?
No.
So you have 2 opposing leaders. I mean, this is very similar. Those 2 kind of represent conservative, liberal, and in Canada it would be what are they called?
No, conservative liberals here. It's Democrat,
sorry.
Republican in the
Right.
States.
Sorry. I don't care about politics, so
Yeah.
I mean, I care more about the animal politics here.
So Snowball starts to win over the crowd in this discussion. And at this point, Napoleon makes this like whimpering squeal noise, and all 9 of those dogs that he sequestered earlier come running out, and they actually chase Snowball right off the farm. Like out of the barn, off the farm, gone forever.
And he was one of the leaders, right?
Yeah, he was one of the only 2 leaders. Gone. So now it's just Napoleon. He's the only one left that anyone looks to.
Oh, now they have totalitarian.
And now they have these dogs who sit. This is one of the really interesting parts. They sat in front of Napoleon, wagging their tails, the same way they would have in front of Mr. Jones. Right? That's how dogs behave in front of their owners.
Do they stand like in front of him, looking the direction he's looking, like they're guards?
Not at this point, but later on they start to. They start to essentially like defend the stage because there's apparently like an elevated area in this barn. So Napoleon cancels all the general meetings. He says there's no more reason to vote because now like the pigs will make the decisions.
Oh shit!
Right, because the pigs will create a council.
This is quickly changing.
Yeah,
this is going from like.
Now we've turned over the hump, and now we're moving into a dark direction.
We're like 10 minutes away from Order 66 or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
What's that called?
Oh.
From Star Wars? Or I think it might have been Order 66.
Order 67?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the order to take out all the stormtroopers?
No, take out all the Jedi.
Oh, yes, okay.
It's when it goes from, what are they called? The Republic or something like that?
Yeah, it goes from the Republic to the Imperial Empire.
Yeah. Imperial Empire. Is that what it's called?
Pretty sure.
It's basically, so it's like the Empire. That's kind of what it is. Or is that what Imperial means?
I don't really know, to be honest.
Interesting.
Yeah,
no, I think Imperial means like higher up.
I think it means, like almost like stately, but not exactly.
Like I'm thinking like Imperium is about supremacists.
Oh, interesting.
Imperial might actually mean like
the tyranny.
Like someone who believes they're like higher up.
Okay, let's stop talking about words we don't know.
I know. This is what the whole fucking channel's about. People come
words
here.
We don't know.
People come to the show to hear about things that aren't true.
We need a dictionary one time.
So I don't believe in dictionaries. That's a different
or thesauri.
Different conversation.
That's not what we're talking about.
It's unacceptable.
So he intimidates all the animals who don't agree, who aren't like accepting of this new sort of rule, using the dogs. And then this is where there's 15 minutes of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. 15 straight minutes.
That's
excessive.
Like, you've heard 3 Minutes of Ecstasy by NSP?
Yes.
The song is about how he takes 3 minutes. He only has sex for 3 minutes, and he has a part where he's just like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3. He's like just like the point is to illustrate how long 3 minutes is, because he only does like 14 seconds, which actually like feels like an forever, eternity.
Yeah,
the point, I guess.
See, it's not so bad.
Exactly.
It's long. It's like 180 seconds.
180 seconds.
So Boxer now adopts another expression: Napoleon is always right.
Oh, that's not that's like you're cutting out all the.
I don't know where he gets it
all
from.
The analogies. That's like obey.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. I kind of agree with his first one. I definitely don't agree with his second slogan. So Snowball develops these plans before he leaves to create a windmill, and Napoleon's like, "No, that's stupid. Let's not do that. It'd be way too much work. Like, why would we?" And then as soon as Snowball's gone, the plans to create the windmill are put into play using the designs that Snowball came up with. And then they tell the animals that Napoleon had in fact supported the windmill and actually designed it himself. He only opposed the idea of the windmill because he wanted to get Snowball out of there.
Right.
So he's now like spinning a complete false narrative.
This guy.
Yeah, he's just designing the world as he wants. And the animals don't really know any better. And also, there's no videos, there's no paper recordings of any of this stuff, so it's only what the animals can remember.
Oh.
Right? So not much time has passed, but time really does start to pass, and that's when you start to notice, like, the animals don't even remember a lot of this early on stuff. So Napoleon then institutes voluntary Sunday work, and if you don't do the voluntary Sunday work, you lose half your rations.
Jeez.
So it's not voluntary at all.
No.
Right? Not even in the slightest.
Exactly.
And this is the work they have to do. So to break rocks for the windmill, because they have no tools, they have to drag stones to the top of the quarry and then push them off and hope they break when they hit the bottom, and then collect all those little stones and take them over to the windmill.
Wow.
And if it doesn't break, they have to drag it up the hill again and try.
What do they need rocks for, sorry?
To build this windmill. Like, the walls are, they need rocks.
Oh, that's right. They build a windmill.
Yeah, so they're collecting all this stone, and they're moving it over to the windmill before they actually start, like, the construction of it. And this is where Boxer, like, has to work the hardest. So Boxer gets up 45 minutes earlier than everybody else. He does, like, most of the work in dragging the boulders because he's so much stronger than everybody. And, like, they even say Boxer probably does more work than all the other animals combined. And this is where they start to realize, like, they're so much more productive because it was, like I said before, where they have so many more hands doing things.
Mm-hmm.
But also they say no animal stole. Like, he says that in the book. No animal stole. And what I realized is that no animal stole by force. No animal burgled another animal. No animal robbed another animal. But the pigs are clearly stealing from the other animals.
They're just not calling it stealing.
They're doing it administratively.
Yeah.
Right? Which doesn't sound like stealing, but it still ultimately is. Right? They stole all their apples.
Well, it's like people
stole their milk.
People laugh at the idea of time theft. Like, if you're being paid for an hour to do work for an hour and you don't work for that hour, that's the same idea. It's
time theft. It's theft, yeah.
As getting someone to work for an hour and not paying them for it. It's the same thing. It's a trade that you didn't do. You've stolen.
So at this point, Napoleon announces that he actually has a plan to trade with other farms. And so a lot of the animals protest because one of the original tenets that Old Major said was, thou shalt not engage in trade. Right? And so the problem is they have no proof those rules existed. Those rules never went into the 7 Commandments. Right. The no commerce rule,
it was all based on
just said.
It was said, yeah.
And so the animals don't even really remember if they remember it right. So they don't know. They'd have no proof. So now things start to accelerate. The pigs move into the farmhouse, which is strictly forbidden originally.
Something that they started like from the very beginning.
Cannot live indoors. And they start sleeping in the beds. And so when the animals throw up a ruckus, Clover, the motherly horse, goes to check the rules. And it says, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. Because they don't sleep with sheets. They just sleep with blankets.
Oh.
And then, so no one fought any of the rules all of a sudden. Like, the pigs started getting up an hour later. No one really fought it. And so the humans keep saying that the windmill is going to be too thin. Like, the windmill is going to fall over because they're not building the walls thick enough.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, one day, like, a huge windstorm comes and knocks it all over, the whole windmill.
Irony.
So Napoleon blames Snowball for it. He says Snowball came in the night and did it. And he says that he's gonna place a price on Snowball's head for it.
Oh yeah.
And he then says that actually, this is the weird part. They follow Snowball's scent to a fence line, and there's pig prints there, which means either Napoleon put those prints there to implicate Snowball, or Snowball was actually there. Right?
But we don't find out.
We don't find out. So they could be just creating those facts. Because, I mean, a pig can't knock over a stone wall. Just can't. Right? Also, if there was winds strong enough to knock over a stone wall, do you really think an animal is going to be outside on a night like that?
Yeah.
So they're actually creating that evidence, more than likely. So they even say, like, the humans are wrong, the walls were not too thin, it must have been Snowball, but we're going to build the walls twice as thick. Just in case.
Right.
Right? So they're going like, no, it wasn't our fault. We didn't do anything wrong. It was totally Snowball, but we're going to make the walls thicker because Snowball did it. You know?
Yeah.
They're not even trying because the animals don't know any better. The animals can't call them on their bullshit because the animals don't know. The animals aren't smart enough.
Right. This is kind of reminding me of like ancient civilizations where even the leaders didn't fully understand everything. And they were like, well...
Yeah, and they lie to their people because they don't want to admit they don't know.
It's like, people keep getting eaten by crocodiles when they go down to the river. It's like, okay, the river is holy. Don't
off limits.
Don't go near the river or you'll be sucked into hell. And everyone's like, what? Crocodiles are one thing.
But sucked into hell?
Hell is a completely different topic, yeah.
So food starts to grow short on the farm. But they don't want anyone to know that they're in a bad situation. So The guy
they'll act differently based on that.
Well, the guy that comes in to do trade with them, they trick him. So they fill these bins all the way up with sand and then put food over top of it, so that it looks like they have a ton of food, even though they don't.
I like these guys.
Yeah, and it's really clever, but he's deceiving this human who's kind of trying to help them because he's like engaging in trade with them. And Napoleon starts to become way more guarded. He starts to become more sequestered. Squealer does so much more of the speaking for him. He becomes sort of this like shut-in type character all of a sudden.
Now you're only dealing with his people and not
exactly through like his limbs, the extensions of Napoleon.
Right.
And at this point, they ask the hens to give up their eggs because they made a deal to sell 400 eggs in exchange for food. So the hens protest because, like, getting rid of that many eggs, you won't be able to hatch enough hens, right?
Right.
So the hens put up this protest, and they all fly up to the rafters and start laying their eggs up there so that when the eggs come out, they fall and break.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because it's a protest. So it was 5 days they did this protest, and they were given no rations because they were protesting. 9 hens died.
Fuck.
The last death was on page, I think, 20 in the Battle of the Cowshed.
People will die.
And now here we are, page 55 is the next deaths, and 9 hens have died.
At the same time.
Pretty much. So, Snowball is rumored to have been at... So he was originally trading with Frederick, and Snowball was rumored to be at Pilkington, and then he was trading with Pilkington, and Snowball was rumored to be at Frederick's, and vice versa. They just keep essentially using Snowball as this, like, catch-all bad term. So
that's I'm sure there's another parallel it's like when we just like point fingers and we're like, oh, it's this or that. I don't have any good examples.
Well, they start to say like Snowball comes in the night and he hides things and he steals our keys and throws them down wells and he breaks things. Like anything that goes wrong, they just blame on Snowball because it's easier than having to face the reality of it. And then they also start to say, so Snowball was said to be at Pinchfield Farm, and apparently Snowball was like in leagues with Jones ever since like the beginning.
Oh no.
Right? And they start to say documents that have only just been discovered reveal that he was
That feels very familiar.
So they say that Snowball even tried to throw the battle at the cowshed. So they say like Snowball was seen to be like running away, and it was like he was mistakenly given his commendation of Animal Hero First Class. Like they're essentially saying like, and
they're rewriting history.
Yeah, Squealer says in the secret documents, but only if you could read them, right? Because the animals can't read these documents, so he's just telling them what's in them.
They're like, hey, trust me on this one.
And then this is an example of how Squealer speaks. So he's talking to them, and he says, "Our leader, Comrade Napoleon," announced Squealer, "has stated categorically, comrades, that Snowball was Jones's agent from the very beginning." So the way he speaks, you can tell, is it's very nonsensical. He's not really trying to appeal to their reason. He's trying to appeal to their insecurities. It's like, Napoleon has stated categorically, comrades, that this is happening. Like and everyone's like, oh shit, well, if Napoleon's saying it...
This evidence is irrefutable!
Yeah, they're just they're brute forcing it, and the animals are letting them do it because, again, they don't know any better. Right? And so because they can get away with it, they get away with it more. Like Napoleon even awards himself with Animal Hero First and Second Class. Just cause.
Oh, both.
Yeah, it just awards himself with both commendations because he feels like he deserves them.
Right.
So
well, I mean,
this is where it gets crazy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, they're at this meeting where 4 pigs come forward and confirm the Snowball stories about like being in leagues with snowballs. And then they're all slaughtered by the dogs. Their throats are ripped out by the dogs.
Wait, they claim that they saw?
No, they claim that they worked with Snowball.
Why did they do that?
So they confess to that. So 3 of the dogs tried to jump on Boxer the horse, and he catches one of them mid-air with his hoof and crushes it against the ground. And then he looks up at Napoleon, and just stares at him. And Napoleon gives him this like head nod, and then he lets the dogs go, and they all like scatter. But the other dogs had already killed the 4 pigs. And then after that,
did they explain why the pigs did that? Because Snowball wasn't actually.
I honestly think the pigs were like essentially paid off in a way. I think they were
told to pretend.
Because then after that, 3 hens, a goose, and 3 sheep were all slaughtered. And it even says this routine of confession and slaughter went on and on.
Wow.
So this was like a long event. We go from basically no one dies other than a sheep. Page 55 out of 102, 9 hens die. And then on page 60, you've got at least 12 deaths. Right? These are directly like a result of other animals. These aren't like accidental deaths. These aren't starvation deaths. So, yeah, like I said, these are the first killings that have ever happened since Jones was around.
Wow.
Right? So, Boxer resolves that the best solution is to work harder. I don't know why. So he starts getting up an hour early. That's his solution. Work harder. Napoleon's always right. Work harder.
And Napoleon's always right.
So the remaining animals, they wander out of there. They're lost. They're confused. They wander into this manger. They start to sing Beasts of England, and they're kind of just reflecting on their original like dreams. And then Squealer shows up and tells them that Beasts of England is now abolished. It is no longer required.
What? Because that was made by the old prophet.
Not really. And he says Beasts of England is a rebellion song about longing for a better place. But we're in that better place now.
Oh.
So continuing to sing this rebellion song would be rebellion against Napoleon, our current state. So he abolishes it because it's no longer necessary. So the animals are doing this thing again where they go, I thought you weren't allowed to kill any other animals. And they run to the barn and they check it, and it says, no animal shall kill another animal without cause.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So now the rules are starting to be really blurry all of a sudden because it benefits Napoleon for the rules to be generic, right? Because he's the one applying the rules.
This is like it's like a small slope at first, and it very quickly
slippery
turns.
Slope, yeah.
Yeah.
So Napoleon starts to turn into this prophet character himself. So he becomes way more isolated. People don't see him nearly as often. He has this black rooster that leads his processions and like caws, I guess, to let people know he's coming. And he starts firing, like the gun is now fired on the day of the cowshed battle and the day of his birthday every year.
So this is now years.
Years. The windmill originally took almost a year to make before it got knocked over by the wind. And then it takes another year or so to build. And then at some point, I think I have a note about it in here, but at some point, like several years pass.
Wow.
And he starts being called all these things like father of all animals, terror of mankind. He starts to be built up into this deity. And people start to attribute things that make no sense to Napoleon. Like, this water tastes excellent today, thanks to the graces of Napoleon. And like, so easy laying eggs today, thanks to Napoleon. Stuff like that.
That sounds like an old version of hashtagging.
Kind of, yeah, like a primitive version of it.
Yeah.
And this is where everything's like totally taking off. 3 more hens confess to trying to murder Napoleon, so they're all executed.
This is very strange.
And now it's a regime.
The way that people keep doing that.
I don't know why. That's one thing I never understood about the entire book is why they confess knowing they're going to get slaughtered.
Because it keeps happening. Maybe it's because they're just so dumb. They keep thinking like, oh, it'll be different for me.
That's part of it. They're almost like throwing themselves upon his mercy and he's not having any. But also, 3 hens confessed. It's like, well, what was their confession? Did anyone hear their confession or did they just get slaughtered? Right? That's how it happens sometimes. It's like, we, the police, had a confession and then we shot him, so it's all good. Like, imagine if that happened. Right. People would go like, what do you mean he could, like, what kind of confession?
Yeah.
But in this world, no one really thinks about it. Everyone goes, oh man, they were in league with Snowball? Well, fuck that guy. Mm-hmm. You know, too bad that happened to him. So the security increases because they now know that someone tried to kill Napoleon, quote unquote.
Right.
And they even bring a taste tester in for Napoleon so that he can't be poisoned when he eats his food. So they're like really tightening up the security around him.
This is like everything you keep adding on to it. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah. So this is where it gets weird. There's a gander You know what a gander is, right? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's a male goose.
Oh.
Pretty sure.
Is it? Pretty
sure. You know, you have a chicken and a rooster. I'm pretty sure you have a goose and a gander.
Interesting.
Pretty sure.
Okay.
Pretty sure. But I said it 3 times, that means I'm not sure at all.
No, if you say it 3 times, it means it's true.
So the gander who helped Snowball mix the corn seeds with weed seeds because they have weeds all over their lawn.
Okay.
So he confesses to Squealer and then commits suicide by eating nightshade berries. Whoa. So that's one of those things where you go, did anyone hear his confession other than Squealer?
No, probably not.
Probably not. So that's one of those things where you think, okay, so now they're just creating the narrative any way they can. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to put words in the mouth of a dead guy.
Right.
They're starting to realize that if someone, dead men tell no tales.
Yeah.
Right? And these are the first people that have ever died in the history of Animal Farm. So they're only now realizing that, how that works. So Napoleon, starts to move into more trade because now he has all the power. He doesn't have to worry about the animals, really fighting back anymore.
He's got a grip now.
Yeah, he's got a death grip. So he reverses his opinion on which farm he wants to trade on and which farm Snowball is at. He keeps doing that. And he even has death to Frederick changes over to death to Pilkington. Right? He's always got these expressions that just keep flip-flopping. Wherever he wants to trade with, he just pretends the other one's evil.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's trying to present this narrative. These are the good guys we trade with. These are the bad guys we don't. And if the tide turns, he just turns his opinion and the animals just have to go with it. Right? So now he sells a bunch of wood to Frederick, and Frederick pays him in counterfeit notes, counterfeit bills.
So they're using money now?
This is the first time.
Oh, okay.
This is the first time. He didn't want to get paid. Frederick tried to pay him in a check. And he's like, I don't want a check. I want bills. And I guess he got paid in fake bills. So he pronounces death to Frederick. And when he's found, he'll be boiled alive. Yeah, that's what he proclaims.
Oh, my God.
So Frederick actually then attempts to take the farm over. I guess they figure if they can take the farm, they can split it between him and the other neighbor. Whereas, because Jones is kind of out of the picture all of a sudden.
Right.
He's had his try. So Frederick's men attack, and there's way more of them and way more guns. So this is a real attack all of a sudden.
So I imagine they sustain extra casualties this time.
Yeah, so the animals all hid in the farmhouses because they couldn't take on the guns, and Frederick and his men actually blow up the windmill using blasting powder.
Fuck, why the windmill?
It's because they want to destroy their infrastructure, right? They want to, because they spent a year and a half working on it.
What do they use the windmill for? Are they generating power?
They'll eventually be using it to mill grain, and then also, electrical power was Snowball's plan, but not Napoleon's. Napoleon wanted to reserve it for food. So they blow that up, and then all the animals are essentially in this mad dash because they just realize what happened. So they all just rush out there and attack them. So a few of the men are actually killed. Boxer concusses one guy because it's a young kid, and he just smashes him in the head with his horseshoe. He didn't remember he had steel horseshoes on, so he just clubs this one kid.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the kid survives and leaves, but ultimately, the animals are all wounded. Almost every animal is wounded with something, a pellet of this or that. A bunch of them die, and when they're coming back, they hear the gun sound, and they're like, "What the fuck is this? Why did the gun sound?" And Squealer comes out, all happy, proclaiming that they had a victory, and they say, "Well, this isn't a victory. They took our windmill." Squealer says, "But this land, comrades, was occupied by our enemies, and now it is not. We've driven them off our land." And he's thinking, okay, I guess that's a victory, but it's not the victory we wanted. It's not the same as the victory at the cowshed.
Yeah, we're not up at this point. We're down now. We've lost something. So
Napoleon even creates a new commendation to bestow upon himself. I don't even remember what it was called, but he just comes up with a new one.
Of course he did.
So at some point in this time, whiskey is discovered. A whole crate of whiskey is discovered, and the pigs get hammered. I guess they drink all of it at once, right? Because they don't really know how it works. So the next day, it's announced that Napoleon is dying.
Oh, because
he drank so much. He's so hungover.
He thinks he's gonna die.
So they proclaim that the drinking of alcohol is to be punished by death. And
what's a poison?
Then later on, Napoleon is starting to make a recovery, and they convert this one area of pasture, which was supposed to be for retired animals. They convert it into barley fields.
But are there any retired animals?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But that's the plan. That's where they'll go if they retire, when they retire.
Right.
Yeah. So he converts it into barley, which obviously is used to make beer.
Mm-hmm.
So they've done that, and suddenly there's this one event that no one comments on. Like, none of the animals really internalize this event, but one day they hear a crash outside the barn, and they rush out to the side of the barn that has all the commandments on it, and Squealer is there with a bucket of paint and a paintbrush, and the ladder is fallen over, and the dogs like rush out and surround him and bring him back to the farmhouse. And when the animals look up, it says, "No animal shall drink alcohol to excess."
Oh.
So the rules are slowly changing piece by piece by piece.
So, they caught a guy changing the rule?
Squealer. They found him on the ground next to like a fallen over ladder and a paintbrush and a paint bucket. But the animals aren't very smart, so they never put the pieces together.
There's a movie of Animal Farm.
Yeah.
And it is so fucking bad. They, for some reason, decided they were going to include a very poorly CGI'd pig climbing down a ladder. It is the worst. It's the worst part of the movie. Like, it pulled me out. Like, it wasn't the worst movie until that point. But yeah, I remember that part.
Sounds gross.
He climbs down from, like, I think he maybe paints, like, calls it Animal Farm or whatever. Like, he like writes something on the sign on the entrance of the farm, and it's him climbing down, and it is so poorly done. It's hilarious.
Yeah, with pig legs and
pig legs don't work like that.
So the rations are reduced for everybody at this point, except the pigs.
Of course.
Right? So the rations start to be reduced, and Squealer says a too rigid of an equality would be contrary to the principles of animalism, which I guess makes sense. Like, you can't feed the same amount to a hen as a horse, but that's their rationale for why they need to eat more. And he tells them that everything is better since Jones's day. He tells them there's more food now than there ever was. We're more productive now than we ever were. We have more stores than we ever did.
More beer
than we ever did. And the animals have nothing to compare it to, so they just have to believe him.
Mm-hmm.
And he even tells them that it's, no matter what, it's better because we aren't slaves.
Okay.
But they kind of are. They just don't know it yet, right? So they just keep selling this narrative. And then this is where all of a sudden the pigs have kind of given up on pretending they're part of the animals. So 31 piglets are born. And Napoleon's the only male pig, right? So these are all his offspring.
Oh, shit.
So
Genghis Khan shit here.
He starts building a schoolhouse. And in the meantime, schools all of those piglets in the farmhouse. And he discourages them from interacting with the other animals. So he wants to segregate the pigs from the rest of them.
Yeah, he wants to keep the high class away from the poor people.
Now this is where it gets really weird.
The plebs.
When a pig and another animal cross paths, the other animal has to move out of the pig's way.
Oh, shit.
Also, pigs wear green ribbons. Pigs of any rank now wear green ribbons as a distinction. So now they're wearing clothing, essentially.
Whoa.
Right? And now Napoleon even takes sugar at his personal table. But he won't give it to the other pigs because he says it'll make them fat. Right? So we've come full circle.
This guy's gone from white lies to full lies to dangerous lies.
Mm-hmm. So the rations keep falling. They even take lamps out of the animals' stalls so that they can save oil. But meanwhile, the pigs remain perfectly comfortable. They're even gaining weight. Wow. A lot of the pigs are getting bigger and bigger. So the barley is brewed, and the pigs are given rations. So each pig gets a pint a day of beer, and Napoleon drinks a half gallon a day of beer.
Gee,
just a lot.
Gallon?
Yeah. To give some perspective, that's 6 beers.
Oh.
Still a decent amount
for a pig, yeah.
For a pig, actually, I guess it's not that much. But now they started instituting military-style marches where they'll all march around the property. And like some of the animals criticize that it's a lot of just standing around in the cold, but they're silenced pretty quickly by the sheep usually. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good.
Oh, I see.
And they also start making songs and poems in Napoleon's honor. You know, they start making him out into this like folklore hero. And this is where like they just keep spinning the lies. So they become a republic. They switch over from whatever they were to a republic, and they have to choose a president. So Napoleon runs unopposed.
Right.
So becomes the president. Not that changes anything.
Yeah.
And then Animal Farm like discovers new documents. New documents that actually reveal that Snowball not only helped the humans but led the humans into the battle at the cowshed, and was even heard to say death to, what did he say? Oh, I forget what he said. He said
death to humans?
No, because it was the opposite. I think he said like something like prosperity to humanity. Like he was heard to have said something that like supported the humans.
2 legs good.
Yeah, and they even say that the wound that Snowball suffered wasn't from Jones's gun, it was from Napoleon's teeth. So like Napoleon wounded Snowball in the battle because Snowball was fighting for the humans. And it's like that.
Wow.
That narrative makes no sense, but because it's been years, the animals barely even remember. It's only 2 or 3 of them that actually know what happened.
Wow,
right?
Yeah.
So this is when Moses reappears. Moses the Raven.
What?
Reappears. After years, he's been gone. And the weird thing is that he keeps telling this narrative about Sugar Candy Mountain. Yeah, Sugar Candy Mountain. And telling them he's been there and like how amazing it is. And even though the pigs keep telling the animals that no such place exists, it's all a fantasy, like there is no Sugar Candy Mountain, but they let Moses stay there and they even give him rations.
Wow.
So it's almost like they bring Moses in to be hope for the animals, right? They bring Moses in because they want him to give this alternative narrative, but they can't confirm that that's true because they know it's not true.
The City of Light.
Yeah, so they're almost bringing him in to be like a Judas character, like I said.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting that he came back too, that he wasn't a big character and he returned later.
Yeah, he's not a very big character in the whole story, but yeah, he left for a long time and then returns.
I bet it's a small pile of garbage, but to a raven, it's Sugar Candy Island.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. Or like the dumpster behind a candy store maybe.
Yeah.
I could believe that.
Yeah,
actually.
it keeps getting refilled.
But he said it's beyond the mountain, beyond the clouds. He said it's behind that cloud right there.
Oh.
So I don't think he's talking about a real place. I think he's just
also a raven.
Messing with them. Yeah, there you go. Quoth the raven.
Exactly.
So at this point, Boxer pushes way too hard because he's been getting up an hour early. He's been giving up all his free time. He's been working too hard. So he was 1 month from retirement. He's 1 month from retirement, and one of his lungs essentially gives out.
Oh, no.
For some reason, they kept telling him a horse's lungs won't last forever. I don't know if that's a thing.
I've never heard that before.
But apparently the horses knew that, and that's what gave out was one of his lungs. So they give him medicine. So the pigs bring out a large bottle of pink medicine. What do you think is in that bottle?
Probably Pepto-Bismol.
Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah.
What other medicine is pink or in a large bottle, right? So they're giving him that twice a day with meals, and it's like hilarious because it's oh, we're medicating him with Pepto-Bismol,
right,
probably. Right. So he decides, okay, well now I'm retired, obviously, because he can't work anymore. So he devotes his life to learning the rest of the alphabet, the other 22 letters after D, and that's his big thing. And he thinks,
yeah, this is all coming back to me. That's like his retirement plan.
And he's like, I'll live it out, and my days with Benjamin, the old donkey, and we'll have a great time. So he is told that he'll be taken away to a hospital. And one day when the animals are working, Benjamin comes running in and collects all the animals, takes them back to the gate because Boxer's being loaded up by a cart. And the cart on the side says horse slaughterer and glue maker or something like that.
Oh, no.
So they're all chasing down the cart trying to get Boxer out of there, but ultimately he can't get out, so he's gone. And the gates close and Boxer's gone. So this is where it gets really weird. Everyone saw that. Everyone knew what happened. So now Squealer says that he was with Boxer when Boxer died in the hospital. And he says that the caravan that took him away, the reason it said horse slaughterer is because they hadn't had a chance to repaint it.
Holy
fuck. So it's
fuck.
actually a medical van.
They're getting really good at lying now.
Yeah, and he says, Boxer was given the greatest medical care. Napoleon sprang for the most expensive medicine without a second thought. And they're just spinning all these stories because the man's dead. So you can say, oh, we spent all this money on this guy because he's not going to tell them it's a lie, right? He's gone. So Napoleon makes a speech, and he says, Boxer was a great servant, like a great comrade. He was a great member of this group. And he says that Boxer's two slogans, I will work harder and Napoleon is always right, are things that all animals would do well to internalize. So they use this as a way to further their own agenda. And now they don't have to have an old wounded horse taking up space.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they made money off of it too.
So he says, we're going to hold a banquet in Boxer's honor. But they don't hold a banquet for everyone. They hold a banquet for the pigs. And they order a case of whiskey and they all get wasted. So
they just tell everyone, like, don't worry, it was good.
It was a good banquet. Yeah, I guess. So then this is the point where years passed. So now everything's status quo. They just keep going forward. Years have passed. Jones dies in some sort of house for drunks somewhere. Just, old, washed up, done. The animals are actually now being brought in. Like, this is the first time ever, somewhere in that era, animals started, being brought in from other farms. So now they're actually trading animals for currency, right? They're treating animals as livestock again, the pigs, right? Because there's new animals that are showing up. A new windmill is... Sorry, the windmill they started making is finished, and they're using it to mill stuff, and they're even in the process of building another windmill. So they're now very affluent. They've purchased 2 adjacent yards and added them to the field area. They're expanding, and they have no luxuries for the animals, no reduced work. The animals work as hard as they ever have. Nothing has changed. And all the animals are still clinging to the hope that one day they'll make it, and there'll be they'll be free. They'll be their own leaders. They'll be beyond the slavery that is the current situation they're in. And so this is where the pigs have decided, we're gonna take full dominion. We're gonna go for it, whole hog, as I always say. So Squealer goes and
is that a pun?
I don't know,
because they're hogs.
That's true. That is true. We're going to whole hog it. So Squealer secludes all the sheep for a week straight. And he says he's teaching them a new song that requires privacy. So he keeps them secluded and he teaches them for a week. Then one day Clover screams, essentially. But, a horse scream. Like a...
Right.
And everyone comes running and they see Squealer walking around the yard on 2 legs.
Oh, shit.
And then immediately all the other pigs start to come out in a procession, walking on 2 legs. And at the very back of the procession is Napoleon carrying a whip in his hand.
Oh, fuck.
And right as they go to object, the sheep all start chanting, 4 legs good, 2 legs better.
Fuck.
And they chant that for how long do they chant that for?
16 minutes.
5 straight minutes. So that's not so bad.
Oh, okay.
That's really not that bad. And then the animals go to check the commandments, and all of them are gone. But all it says is, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That's all it says.
Fuck.
Everything else is missing.
I was trying not to say that
get there.
throughout this part. Yeah.
So now all these changes come in. Pigs all start carrying whips. They get a TV. They get a phone. They get magazines. So they're doing all these human things. Napoleon starts smoking a pipe. He starts wearing clothes. So do the other pigs. So does, pretty sure, like, he has one female pig that wears Mrs. Jones's old clothes.
Whoa.
Now they even start to invite the neighboring farmers over. They invite Pinchfield, or Pilkington and Frederick over to inspect the farm. So the animals don't even know if they're more afraid of the pigs or the other humans, right? Because they're all the same now. So the animals actually, like, they creep up to the farmhouse window when they're all sitting down to dinner, the pigs and the humans, and they're watching. And so Pilkington makes a toast. Pilkington says, we were really unsure about having pigs lead a farm, and we had no idea what was going to happen. We didn't support the idea, but now that we've seen it, you have the most up-to-date machinery. You have the most well-maintained farm we've seen. The animals work harder for less food than anyone else's farm. The aspects of Animal Farm that, like, work the best are even going to be introduced onto the human farms because they're so efficient. And he even says that, the pigs have lower classes of animals just the same way the humans have their lower classes of people. That's what he compares it to.
So essentially the animals are now leading...
worse off than they were with Jones.
Yeah.
They work harder, they get less, they're led by a more vindictive group, right? So they've hopped out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Wow.
And so Napoleon stands up to make a speech. And he says he never intended to stir rebellion on other farms. Like, that was a misnomer. That wasn't a real thing, because he's trying to downplay all the things that once happened.
Yeah.
And he says there's also this silly thing where the animals refer to each other as comrade. That is to be suppressed. So something they began is now, it looks bad, right? So he says that, we're going to shut down because that's not the case anymore. The animals aren't their comrades anymore. They've separated themselves.
They've done a lot of that.
And he says that they're going to suppress the marching practices because it's, unnecessary. They're changing the flag back to a blank flag, so there will no longer be a horn and a hoof on it. It's just going to be a plain green flag. And he even changes the name back to Manor Farm.
Whoa.
So now we've 100% come full circle. So the animals... The animals essentially just walk away from the window feeling defeated, and they hear a commotion inside. When they go and look, both Pilkington and Napoleon had both played the Ace of Spades at the same time.
Oh.
Right? So that starts this huge, essentially a war, in the room. They're all battling it out, and I'm sure guns were drawn if there were guns, right? And this is how the book chooses to end. So, spoilers. Not that this isn't all spoilers.
This is a book discussion.
12 voices were shouting in anger. They were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. So this is where I want you to actually talk.
Oh.
Because you've seen the movie, I haven't.
Yeah.
So that last scene, tell me how that goes down. Well, first of all, I'll just explain that this is now the moment where the animals are basically not even able to tell the difference between a pig and a human.
Right.
Because they've become so much alike them. So how is this done in the movie?
Well, I don't remember the fighting, actually. I remember it just being I think the pig was done in this really gross, like this really like a fat cat,
like a fat human type thing.
Yeah, he's just like, oh yes, we've harvested the barley.
Oh, like a Groucho Marx type, big wig.
He was basically a roadhog.
Oh,
for Overwatch.
Jeez.
And then in order to try to make the humans and the pigs look like each other, the animals were looking through, I don't know, it was just wavy glass,
like stained glass, almost like old glass,
like really old glass.
Okay.
Yeah,
like imperfect glass,
very imperfect. So they weren't, it was everything was moving around when they were looking, as you moved your head across the glass, everything got all warped, and so you couldn't tell. You really could tell which one was what, but that was their way of trying to visually represent the situation, because there's no people watching this in the book. It's up to your imagination. You're getting the perspective of animals, so they're trying to give you the perspective of the animals,
and it doesn't work.
No, it's one of those movies, pretty much every classic story is also made into a garbage movie
adaptation, right?
Well,
I think I know how they should have done it. So obviously, yes, this was the way, I liked how they did it in the book, because it makes a good point. He looks from one, looks to the other, looks from one, looks to the other, can barely tell them apart. Makes sense. But to portray that accurately in a movie, I think what they should have done is either had a picture of Napoleon or Napoleon himself standing there, and then it either fades to or moves to, you see an image of Jones in Jones's day, wearing the same clothing, with a pipe in his mouth, looking identical, but not being a pig. So you have a pig, and then you have a human. They don't have to look identical. The resemblance is way more important than the physically looking like each other, I think.
Or what if this person has these flashbacks to Jones?
The animals could.
And they just see his clothing, and then they see that Napoleon's wearing his clothing. And then it flashes back to Jones, and now Jones is also a pig. They can't even remember if Jones was a person or a pig, the same way they can't remember if Napoleon is a pig or a person.
Whoa.
That could have been a way that
That could have been a way to do it. Because I don't think George Orwell is trying to say the pigs resembled humans. He's trying to say the pigs behave so human-like that there's very little to distinguish them from each other.
That the animals had a hard time figuring it
Yeah,
out.
he's not saying they grew hands and their faces turned to human faces. He's saying they did everything they set out not to do.
Yeah.
They became the thing they thought they hated the most.
In order to gain power over the lessers.
And it just goes to show you how little incremental changes can add up to major differences. And that's actually the reason whenever you build something, you always measure to one standard point. So let's say I want to set something 16 inches apart. I don't measure 16 inches from the last one. I measure 16 inches, then 32, then 48. Yeah.
Right, because otherwise, if one of them's off, they're all going to be off.
Exactly. This way, one of them's off, only one of them's off. There's no standard. There's no meter stick they can use because they have no words written on paper. They have no television or internet. All they have is the memory of these shitty animals that can't even remember D. Right?
Well,
a horse can't remember E. How is he supposed to remember what happened 6 years ago?
That's why we came up with writing. That's why humans did that, because they realized that all they knew was what their parents told them, which was told to them by their grandparents. And there's already misinformation in that two-person switch.
Yeah.
You take several generations. Like, that's like... Art is actually really important for human civilization because it allowed us to pass information on before we had words.
In a more effective way. Well, not in a more effective way, in a longer lasting way.
Yeah.
Because also art has no language, which is something that people often forget about that. Like some artists, you'll see their work and you love their work, but they wouldn't have even spoken the same language as you. Same language as you.
That's why it bugs me how all the schooling. Art school requires an abstract, which is when you explain your work. It's like, no, the work explains itself, motherfucker.
That's the whole point of what we do.
I think it might have been Pablo Picasso who said it's not up to the artist to explain to the audience what the piece means. It's up to the audience to explain to the artist what the piece means.
What they get out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's what this book is all about. It ends. That's how it ends, right?
Yes, that's
no resolution, no conclusion, just. And it turns out we're worse off than when we were.
Mm-hmm.
He wants you to feel that way. Because if he resolved it positively, if they rose up and they killed everybody and they became like this happy fucking family, there'd be no lesson. He wants you to feel at the end like making a change doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a positive thing, and how humanity does a loop, and how like the people on the bottom believe that when they get to the top, that they won't treat the people on the bottom the same way, but
they do.
His idea is that they probably will.
Yeah, well, another thing is to not give your full trust to those who have control over you. Scroobius Pip has a great song where he says, I, as a citizen of this country, am not accountable to the government. As a citizen of this country, the government is accountable to us. And I, as a citizen, reserve the right to rise up if the government is not doing that job. And I think that that's the idea here. The animals believe that the pigs are the only way they can stay free of Jones, and in giving ultimate power to the pigs, they allow the pigs to become Jones.
Yeah.
Whereas if they had some sort of meter stick to measure that things were getting worse or that things were equally as bad, they would have been a lot more likely to defend Snowball in the first place. Right, to reject the military rule. But that's also a big part of it, is that there was a military aspect to this whole story with the dogs.
Yeah.
And I didn't touch on it a ton because after a while, a lot of societies internalize the fact that it's a military dictatorship.
Right.
They don't constantly have to remind themselves, I will die if I don't do this. They just know to do what they're told. Right? Because it's too hard for anyone's brain, animal or human, I guess, to think about that all the time. Like, if I don't do what I'm told, I'll be killed. If I don't do what I'm told, I'm going to be attacked by dogs, right? It's really way easier for you to just remember what they tell me to do, I do.
Right.
That's it. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's easier on your brain. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people have to suffer to create great change. But also a lot of people can suffer to create no change or negative change. So it's like you said, not all change is for the positive. So this book, I think, is a great way to see where people can go. And it applies to all levels. It applies to, people working in a municipal office, all the way up to the federal government, to people who work in intelligence agencies, to just, the way you run your household. There's a lot of things in there where you realize that power is this big responsibility, and that it's not only easy to abuse your power, it's incentivized to abuse your power.
Yeah.
Having power makes it easy to abuse. The more you abuse it, the easier it is to abuse it.
I mean, you kind of have to go 100% on that. Like, if you're gonna push people around, you have to keep pushing them around.
And because they'll push back if you don't.
Yeah, keep kicking them down and never let them up. Because if you kick them for a while and then let them get up, now you have to fight them.
They'll hit back. Yeah. I think everyone should read this story because it's only 100 pages and none of it's fluff. It's written razor sharp, and it's a really good book. It's a great read, and George Orwell is a badass motherfucker. Gotta say it, he's Banff.
Yeah.
He certainly is. That's why he's George the Man Orwell. So this was super depressing because it's supposed to be super depressing.
Yeah.
And I think that if anyone learns anything from this, then I've done what I set out to do. I learned a shitload from this book, and I made so many notes because I felt like so many points were important.
Right.
And I think that that's amazing that in less pages and less words, he was able to make more important points than other books I've read.
Yeah.
And that's why the next one is probably going to be 1984 by George Orwell.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so he may be on an Orwell kick, at least for a little bit.
Did he write that in 1984?
I don't believe so. I believe it's... Well, no, because I'm pretty sure...
Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he wrote it, how sometimes we'll make a movie that's about, 2025, and we assume it's this, crazy flying car future. Same idea. He was in the 40s, and he was looking towards 84, saying, what could happen? Honestly, the next one is going to be very similar. We're going to be talking about governments and control.
Well, I know nothing about that, so that'll be fun.
I know it's about Big Brother, but that's about it. That, and I think the only other thing on the horizon is Stairway to Heaven. I think this is going to be the next Adiscussion, the next mini discussion.
Song discussion?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's another 8-minute song. So
yeah.
But it's interesting because the first one, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, has a lot of lyrics. It's very dense.
Yeah.
Whereas Stairway to Heaven's not. It's very musical.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what the differences are, because I'll be digging more into less words, right? So I'll be like a grade 12 trying to desperately scrape out a whole report
the night before.
Oh yeah, the poison for Cusco. Cusco's poison. Everything getting written twice just to make sure it is expanded out.
In the question of whether or not Stairway to Heaven is a good song, I would agree that it is in fact a good song.
I would agree that Stairway to Heaven is a great song. You just got to say it because Stairway to Heaven is a huge title.
It is.
It's just 4 words right there. The Stairway to Heaven. This was good.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, and hopefully come join us again.
Yeah.
Check out the old, check out the new, and we will check in with you.
Just check yourself.
Check yourself before we discuss you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Bye.
Peace.